Imagine you're standing on a battlefield nearly 1,000 years ago. In one hand is a sharpened spear. Around you, soldiers grip swords, axes, and bows that haven't changed much in thousands of years. Victory still depends on who swings harder, shoots straighter, or survives longer. Then, somewhere in the distance, there's a sound nobody has ever heard before. A sudden flash, a violent explosion, a cloud of thick gray smoke, and a piece of metal tears through the air faster than anything nature ever created. In that single moment, warfare changes forever. This is the story of how humans invented guns. Not modern rifles, not revolvers, not the action movies where someone somehow fires 80 bullets from a pistol that only holds 15. We're talking about the very first time a human realized that fire itself could become a weapon. Because here's something most people never think about. Nobody actually set out to invent a gun. The first people who discovered the secret behind firearms weren't trying to build weapons at all. They were looking for something completely different, and the truth begins with a strange black powder that was never meant to change history. Let's go back about 1,200 years, ancient China, the Tang Dynasty. Imagine you're an alchemist. Except alchemy back then wasn't just weird science, it was a respected profession. Kings hired alchemists, emperors funded them. Entire laboratories existed for one purpose: finding the secret to immortality. That's right, the people who accidentally invented gunpowder weren't trying to build better weapons, they were trying to live forever. Think about that for a second. One of the deadliest inventions in human history began as an attempt to avoid dying. History has a strange sense of humor. Ancient Chinese alchemists experimented with hundreds of natural ingredients: mercury, sulfur, charcoal, herbs, minerals, anything that might unlock eternal life. Then, sometime during the 9th century, someone mixed 3 particular ingredients: charcoal, sulfur, and saltpeter. At first, nothing seemed unusual, until they added fire. The mixture didn't simply burn, it exploded. Ancient Chinese writings even warned future alchemists about it. One text described how the mixture produced flames so fierce they burned people's hands, faces, and even entire houses. That's probably the scientific version of saying, please don't do what we just did. But here's where things become fascinating. Instead of throwing the recipe away, people became curious. Very curious. Because once humans discover something powerful, we almost never stop experimenting with it. The earliest use of gunpowder wasn't military. It was entertainment. Fireworks. Imagine seeing fireworks for the very first time. No electricity, no engines, no loud machines, just darkness. Then suddenly, boom, a brilliant explosion lights up the sky. It must have looked like magic. For centuries, fireworks became part of religious festivals and celebrations across China. But someone eventually asked a dangerous question. What if this explosion could do more than entertain people? What if it could hurt someone? Human history has a long tradition of asking questions that probably should have been left unanswered. The earliest gun wasn't really a gun. It was called the fire lance. Picture a long wooden spear. Now tie a bamboo tube near the end. Fill that tube with gunpowder. Light it. Instead of launching a bullet, it blasted fire, sparks, smoke, and burning fragments directly toward an enemy. Was it accurate? Not even close. Was it terrifying? Absolutely. Imagine charging toward a soldier carrying what looks like an ordinary spear. Then suddenly flames shoot out of it like a miniature dragon. Even if it didn't kill you, it could easily make you reconsider your career choices. But humans are natural problem solvers. Once they realized exploding gas could push flames forward, someone wondered if it could also launch something solid. So they packed small stones into the tube, then bits of metal, then iron balls. Eventually, they discovered something incredible. The explosion wasn't the weapon, the projectile was. That realization changed everything. Because once you understand that expanding gas can launch an object at tremendous speed, you've invented the basic principle behind every firearm ever made. Modern rifles, shotguns, cannons, even spacecraft use the same fundamental idea. Rapidly expanding gas pushes something forward. It's surprisingly simple. The difficult part was making it reliable. Early guns were dangerous, sometimes more dangerous to the person holding them than to the enemy. Metal barrels burst, gunpowder misfired, Explosions happened at the wrong time. If you survived firing your own weapon, that was already a decent start. But people kept improving them. Because they worked. Not perfectly, just better than what existed before. By the 13th century, knowledge of gunpowder began spreading beyond China. Historians still debate exactly how. Some believe merchants carried the knowledge along the Silk Road. Others point toward the Mongol Empire. The Mongols connected enormous parts of Asia and Europe through conquest and trade. Ideas traveled almost as quickly as armies. Once gunpowder reached the Middle East and Europe, innovation exploded almost as fast as the powder itself. European blacksmiths began replacing bamboo with forged iron. Iron could withstand greater pressure. Greater pressure meant larger explosions. Larger explosions meant faster projectiles. Soon came hand cannons. Imagine holding a short metal tube attached to a wooden stick. To fire it, you poured gunpowder inside, dropped in a metal ball, then touched a burning match to a tiny hole. Simple, slow, dangerous, but incredibly effective compared to anything before it. The strange thing is that these early firearms weren't especially accurate. At close range, they were devastating. At longer distances, hitting anything became partly a matter of luck. Yet armies embraced them anyway. Why? Because training a master archer could take years, sometimes decades. Training someone to fire a primitive gun took far less time. That completely changed warfare. Kings no longer needed generations of expert bowmen. They could arm thousands of ordinary soldiers with firearms. Technology had begun replacing skill. And once that happens, history rarely goes backward. Over the next few centuries, guns improved at an astonishing pace. The matchlock allowed soldiers to ignite powder more safely. Then came the wheel lock, then the flintlock. Each invention solved another problem. Less weighting, more reliability, better accuracy, faster firing. Eventually, inventors added grooves inside barrels. These spiral grooves, called rifling, made bullets spin. Just like a football thrown with a perfect spiral, a spinning projectile flies straighter. That single improvement transformed accuracy. Suddenly, hitting distant targets became much more realistic. Another huge breakthrough came with cartridges. Instead of carrying loose powder, bullets, and fuses separately, everything was combined into one neat package. Loading became dramatically faster. Battles became deadlier. Industrial factories later took this even further. Machines could produce identical parts. Identical parts meant interchangeable weapons. Broken components could simply be replaced. Repairs became easier. Production became faster. Entire armies could now be equipped with standardized firearms. The Industrial Revolution didn't invent guns. It made them unstoppable. But here's something people often overlook. The invention of guns didn't just change warfare, it changed society itself. Hunting became easier. Empires expanded farther. Castles that had stood for centuries suddenly became vulnerable to cannons. Armor that once protected knights became increasingly useless. Entire military strategies disappeared. Even politics changed. Power shifted toward nations capable of producing better weapons. Technology became just as important as bravery, maybe even more important. And yet, underneath every modern firearm, every sophisticated rifle, every advanced military weapon, the basic principle hasn't really changed since those Chinese alchemists mixed charcoal, sulfur, and saltpeter over 1,000 years ago. An explosion creates expanding gas. The gas pushes a projectile. Everything else is refinement. There's something strangely human about this entire story. We didn't invent guns because we dreamed of firearms. We invented them because curiosity kept leading us somewhere unexpected. A search for immortality became fireworks. Fireworks became fire lances. Fire lances became hand cannons. Hand cannons became rifles. Each generation solved one small problem. None of them could fully imagine where the next improvement would lead. History often works like that. The biggest inventions rarely appear fully formed. They evolve through thousands of tiny discoveries made by ordinary people trying to solve immediate problems. Sometimes they're searching for medicine. Sometimes they're chasing knowledge. Sometimes they're simply asking, what happens if I mix these together? Occasionally, the answer changes the world. So who invented the gun? The honest answer is no single person. There was no lone genius standing in a workshop shouting, "I've done it." Instead, the invention stretched across centuries. Chinese alchemists accidentally discovered gunpowder. Engineers transformed it into fire lances. Metalworkers strengthened barrels. Soldiers improved designs. Blacksmiths refined mechanisms. Inventors across Asia, the Middle East, and Europe each contributed another piece of the puzzle. The gun wasn't created in a single moment. It evolved, just like language, agriculture, and civilization itself. And perhaps that's the most fascinating part of the story. The technology that reshaped kingdoms, redrew maps, and influenced nearly every major conflict in history began with people searching for eternal life. They never found immortality, but they did create something that ensured history would never look the same again. The next time you see an old cannon in a museum or watch a historical battle in a movie, remember that its story doesn't really begin on a battlefield. It begins in a quiet laboratory, where an alchemist mixed 3 ordinary powders hoping to live forever, and instead accidentally changed the future of humanity.